Welcome to the Daily Objective, and today is everybody's favorite episode of the week. It's the Thursday Collective episode, and we've got quite a cast of hosts here today. Let's meet them all, and we're going to be talking about a number of things, including, should men learn game? What does that even mean? We'll find out. Here are the hosts. First off, we've got a guy, you've seen him all over the place, various hit shows, including TV Talk here on the ARCUK network. It's Mark Pellegrino.
Yo, what's up, man?
And then we've got a guy who, well, TV shows will be made about him. He is one of the great Greek thinkers of all time. Is he going to be the next Greek philosopher to storm the world and take it by storm? Well, he's got some big sandals to fill. It's Nikos Sotirakopoulos.
Now we have to repeat the sandals joke, but thank you.
You're welcome. And we've got a lady who studies the cosmos. She is a scientist. She's a podcaster. She's doing the Happiness Project with Tal Safani. She is a real Jill of all trades, you can say. Please welcome Amanda Maxim.
All right, yeah, so we're going to talk about man stuff. I'm here to be your token astrophysicist.
Ooh, now that we need to get to the bottom of the things, and it's indispensable. And then last but not least at all, it's your favorite author of some of Yaron Brooks' greatest books. It's Don Watkins.
Good to be here.
So, Don, do you want to take it away with the topic we're here to discuss?
Yeah, I'm really curious to have a conversation about this. So I lived in just outside of Washington, D.C. until I went to California to work at the Ayn Rand Institute in 2006, I guess. And so somewhere around 2005, I'm in a club called Dream. And this dude walks in and looks like, I don't even know what he looks like, but it's like 6'5", dressed in this insane garb, and is doing magic around the club for a bunch of people. And I ended up talking to him briefly, and the dude was calling himself Mystery. And it was just the weirdest, most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen. And somehow found out that, like, apparently he made his living as a pickup artist. And fast forward a year later, something like that, I guess this book comes out called The Game, about this guy, and apparently like a whole bunch of other pickup artists who have mastered the art of seducing women. And that became kind of like the cultural touchstone of what people now refer to as game. I think we can talk about like what that means, as you said, and if there's a kind of better concept. But there is like what I think the whole phenomenon showed is, healthy or unhealthy, there's a genuine interest among people of learning, like, how do I attract people of, well, I was going to say the opposite sex, but basically like, in particular for men, how do I attract women? And this became like, these became kind of the self-professed experts on this topic. And there's a real interesting question about, like, we have this, I think, false alternative of many of these people, in my judgment, are rightly seen as like, how do I master manipulation and to get people into bed whom I have no actual human interest in? And then there's the other people saying like, well, no, just be natural, be yourself. And those are kind of the two alternatives that are offered. And those, to me, don't seem particularly satisfying on either side of it. So I do think that there's things to learn about how to find a romantic partner, and like social skills that you can learn to be more confident and more attractive to people. But I think what generally falls under the category of game is basically specializing and preying on people's insecurities and neediness.
So it's not necessarily about seducing women. It's about how to meet them and get them feeling comfortable enough to remain in contact with you. Is that a fair?
Well, I mean, in general, it's, you want to find somebody that you're interested in, and you want to be the kind of person who's interesting and fun to be around rather than awkward, weird, or, I mean, what will often happen, and this is, I think, so in general, I just think it's a good thing to have social skills, but there is a category, I think, romantically where, like, you often hear guys complaining about falling into the friend zone, and sometimes it's just a woman's not attracted to you, but often it's because they're so used to hiding any kind of romantic and sexual interest, that then it gets sprung on somebody that they've been hanging out with as friends for 6 months, and they're like, what are you doing? I've never thought about you that way. And there is things to learn about, like, no, there's ways to not be creepy and not be aggressive and naturally just be upfront about your interest in somebody, that you might not become friends with them, but at least you won't be put in the friend zone, right? Like, it doesn't guarantee a romantic relationship, but it does guarantee that, like, they'll realize that you're interested in, and you be able to, like, hash that out before you've invested all of your time and emotion into somebody.
Yeah. I guess, Nikos, I think you have a lot to say about this, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that game has to do with fooling someone or playing on their insecurities. So, or at least maybe there was something like that in Mystery's time. But here's my overall point. Most people would agree that self-development is good. And yet, when it comes to the one area that many, many people struggle, and an area which is very central in one's life, which is romantic life, suddenly allowable opinion wants us to be way more critical of self-development in the area of romance. So ideally, people wouldn't have to learn game because everyone would be comfortable interacting, or people would have the social networks that would tell them how this is done. I mean, it used to be the case that you had this uncle, if your father or your uncle, whoever was the cool guy, would tell you, look, this is how it's done. This is what is appreciated in the field of romance. I mean, we are not intrinsicists. These things don't come by itself. Some people cannot put 2 and 2 together from observation. They have all these bad influences from rom-coms, from Hollywood, from TV series or whatever. Unfortunately, this support network that used to be is not there anymore, so they have to rely somewhere. Some of the things that they rely on is good. Some of the things is not that good. But overall, I would say it's an industry which is important because it is needed by that many people. And then we can decide what is good and what is bad. But overall, I wouldn't say it's about fooling someone to fall in bed with you. Mostly it's about figuring out how to become a better person and figuring out what value you have to exchange romantically with someone else. That you have to be a person of a particular value to attract another person of a particular value. So that's why I'm a proponent of quote game.
Mark, can you comment on your familiarity with this whole world, and also any opinion you may already have, if any?
I'm an actor. I know a lot of people with good game, but I don't think it should be called game then. In Nikos's definition, it's just one more area of self-improvement, like working out and eating right and getting good philosophy. It's just a way of putting one aspect of your life into clear perspective, acting on it, knowing that it's a value and treating it like a value. But game, all the guys that I know with game bed women. That's what they do. They know how to seduce women. It's a short-term thing. It's not necessarily, I mean, sometimes they eventually find somebody who's right for them, but when they connect with somebody on that level, it has very little to do with game. It has to do with, common interests and common values that they share. Maybe their self-confidence has greased the skids a little bit, so that that those parts of their lives could be, were easy to access. But I'm not a fan of the idea of game. I'm not a fan of the idea of picking up people. I like the idea of self-improvement for sure. If it helps you be approachable and approach somebody who you're actually interested in and see if there's something further that develops between the two of you, then that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I think about the distinction is, what's your goal? If your goal is, I want to figure out how to get people in bed, that's a bad goal. And there's people who specialize in teaching that. And that's typically what's called game. But if the goal is, I want to be more attractive and be able to interact and connect with people I'm attracted to, like, that's something that, yeah, we have to learn how to do. And it's not obvious how to do. And I think Nikos makes a really important point that we get horrible templates for doing that in the culture. Like, oh, Billy Crystal can just hang around Meg Ryan being a doofus and not knowing what he wants for a month. And eventually they'll fall in love because that's what best friends do. And I love that movie, by the way. But if that's your kind of guide to the romantic world, like that's bad. I mean, thankfully, Ayn Rand's novels, though they're definitely not guidebooks to how to get a date, they at least, I think, show like a really healthy romantic relationship and give kind of an image of like, if you're a man with purpose and confidence and you find a woman with purpose and confidence, like that's a good starting point.
Amanda, we haven't heard from you on this topic yet.
Yeah, so I was in preparation for the show. I looked up some of like what are these rules and what are the game that you're supposed to have. I agree with Mark that I really don't like the idea of calling it game, because it implies that it's a game, and I don't know. I guess I'm not interested in a game. I don't know. It's real. It's serious. It's something that you want. It's playful, but it's ultimately not a game. So I don't like that whole term. And then like the specific advice that I found, some of it's good and some of it's, not good. And the thing that's missing to sort through it is like, why are you telling me to do these things? Like, you're not supposed to talk with a man for more than 15 minutes. And it's like, well, why not? Or don't call him back or something, and sometimes you get an idea of what the reason is, and that's really helpful. It's, because you don't want to, you're confident in yourself, and you don't need him to, to call you right away, or those types of things. So if like confidence is the real value, and then, so now I can kind of see where we're going. And I guess in general, that was the things that I found behind it, were like this, how to develop confidence about yourself, even in the context of you're interacting with like men that you're interested in, and you're kind of, that can be really vulnerable and hard to do. And then the other is how to connect in a certain way, which is like in a way that indicates that you're interested romantically. And so rules generally not helpful, because you don't understand what's behind the rules. But if you could teach people, give advice on those things, on like why you're doing those things, that's the valuable thing, because in every situation it's different. Like, I don't know, do I have to hang up after 15 minutes? Maybe.
I mean, Amanda raises a really important point, so that I actually think in much of the game world, there is a certain kind of reasoning behind how they approach things. There's a certain model of human behavior and of kind of sexual identity for people, and it's really wrong. Most of it is evolutionary based, and it's the idea of men lead women and want lots of women, and women, want to raise babies, and so they're very selective. And it's like it basically takes this.
But I have to jump in here for a second, all right? Because years ago, sorry to interrupt, Don, but years ago, I'm still friends with this guy. I was friends with a guy who had Total Game, and one day, now this may be different now, but one day he's like, Mark, one of the first things I do when I'm around a woman that I like is establish my physical presence, which wasn't hard to do because he was a college wrestler, a very athletic guy. But he did it. He told me ways that he did it, and I actually tried that, and it was surprisingly effective. Now it could be because
an example.
I don't know that things would go off like this today. This is 20 years ago, but he would when he approached a woman, he would literally, touch her like on the arm and sort of talk to her, but in a physical way that wasn't aggressive. It's hard to describe because it was subtle, but it was establishing a physical presence and a kind of control and confidence in his physical presence that does have a subconscious effect on people. And maybe it's like what Amanda's saying. It was confidence and a projection of confidence, which he did have. I think courage is more important than confidence, to be honest with you. I think the other thing will follow if you've got the courage to fight like a samurai, like you're already dead. If you have that kind of approach to almost anybody, I think it's very seductive when somebody sees you not worry about safety nets.
And most of the things that would apply to women also apply to other men in any context, because they're nice values. So you said the touching. Have you noticed in sports, particularly in football or what you people call soccer? Think about Mourinho or Pep Guardiola. Before they put one of their players in the game, they hug him and they touch and they give advice. This is always something soothing. It's not only about, so it's not about sexual aggressiveness. It's just saying, I'm here. I'm the coach. I'm here to help you. You go there and you win. So it's something which is most of the things that work, quote work, are nice things. It's nice to be not easy to get. Why? Because you have other values in life. You have other things to do in life. So it's not about reply after 3 days. I mean, if all the time you are over your phone, yeah, just reply immediately. But if you don't reply in 3 days because you have other things to do, then it means that you pursue values and you see romance as something that is surrounding this. It's not the one thing that you're completely desperate about because you have nothing else going on in life. Let's be honest. Some years ago, I was thinking, many years ago, creating an anonymous blog, something like Game in the Fountainhead. Think about many of the things that Howard Rock does. He has never heard about game. He's just being himself. But they are very attractive because they show something about his values and his virtues. And again, you can be a complete loser and say, oh, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to... No, that's going to be a recipe for disaster. But there are things that are, quote, I don't want to say universally, but they are very possible to create, to invoke a reaction from the opposite sex or from whatever the polarity is, a sexual reaction from others, this kind of, this guy is a leader. And there's nothing wrong with making people aware that, you know what, these things exist. And by the way, when you don't do these things and you do the exact opposite because someone told you that it's a good idea, you end up like a creep. So let me ask you this, Amanda.
Sure.
Who is, quote, creepier? Someone who has, someone who is flirtatious, but in a nice way, because he has this, what you said, physical presence, but not overcrossing any boundaries. It's just that he feels comfortable with himself and with his body. Or this weird guy at the office who is like, he has no idea how to talk to women. So poor guy once feels romantically attraction to a woman and he becomes weird. He tell me what I can do for you. I'll do anything for you. How are you today? Like, who of these people do you think is creepier, to put to say? Because most people say, oh, gay makes you creepy or whatever. I think there's nothing creepier than having no idea how to interact with women. But what do you think?
I don't know about creepy. I mean, it's definitely, and like, okay, so I'm a physicist, so yeah, like I get it. I've been around a lot of awkward men, and I understand that it's hard to do. So I'm probably more understanding of that kind of thing. But yeah, I guess that's more creepy. I don't know. I don't know. I'm hard to creep out. I guess
didn't say to put you on the spot. Like, see, I'm right. I'm asking genuinely because I've asked many women telling me that when someone comes to talk to them, they kind of cheer for them not to be the creepy guy and to be someone who knows how to interact with women. So in a way, someone comes to talk to a girl. The girl hopes that this guy is not one of these creeps that they have zero idea how to interact with another human being, and then it becomes uncomfortable.
I mean, but there's almost a kind of like a certain kind of fallacy that's potential here, which is that it's so I definitely agree that when you're uncomfortable around people, it makes them uncomfortable. But there's also if you're too comfortable around people, it makes them uncomfortable. So basically the question amounts to, if you get the kind of mixture of comfort but respect exactly right, then is that better than getting it wrong? It's, well, yeah, by definition it is, right? Because there's definitely these kind of player types who I've seen really, really bother women I respect. Because it crosses over into kind of this pushiness, entitlement. I think what's going on in both cases is that there's a lack of awareness of the other person. The person who's uncomfortable in themselves isn't seeing the person in front of them as a person, but as this intimidating status figure that they can't live up to and that they want something from. And then the kind of person who's overly comfortable is not seeing them as a person, but is in effect this kind of chess piece that I'm going to move around the board in order to get what I want.
So maybe people who are like overly comfortable, that is sort of pushy and aggressive, they're not the ones who need to learn game, so to speak, but like people whose natural like talent is not meeting new people, those people can definitely use help. And it doesn't need to be like an official program, the game workshop. It could be having a friend that is more experienced with meeting girls or just meeting people in general who could sort of advise. Like something that came to mind when Nikos was talking about Howard Rourke, that I think it's useful in general to have like kind of a character in your mind, kind of like, well, who do I want to be, or what do I admire in a character or a person, and then what would that person do in this situation? So let's say Nikos is telling me, oh, this girl didn't text me back, and it hurt me, but then she texted me a week later. Should I express that I'm upset that she didn't get back to me till now? I would tell Nikos, well, what would the guy do? This character that you formed in your mind. The guy, he's got lots of friends. He knows lots of girls. He's busy. He's having fun in life. Would that guy take it personally that the girl took a week to get back to him? Of course not. So be the guy. And of course, it'll over time, you'll actually become that guy.
So the good quote lesson would not be what is the trick on when to reply back. The good lesson is, why don't you make your life such a life that you don't care that much, unless it's like the woman of your life, when she replies back, because you're too busy pursuing other things. But again, when the model of masculinity had been that you drink beers and you sit on the couch and watch football, eating popcorn or whatever was in the 90s, or for my generation when they were growing up, then of course you would have missed that. And just one thing, when I mentioned Rock, obviously I didn't mean his aggressiveness in that particular scene, which for the record, it's one of my least favorite scenes in all of Roland's novels. So I mean, generally his, shall I say, aloofness, not aloofness, that he is who he is. Sorry?
He doesn't need somebody, like need them as sustenance. And I think people pick up on that cannibalism, that desire, to feed off of them. It's sort of a parasitism. Where you're saying, look, I could live perfectly fine independently. I'm an autonomous person. I love you and I want you in my life. I don't need you. I mean, in a way, if you really love someone, you do. But it's like you can also live without them, and you can project that independence.
And there's steps of the process. First, you desire somebody, and if you play your cards right and the stars align, you might actually end up in a relationship with them. And over time, you grow to need one another. But if you try to jump from meeting someone right to being, wanting to be madly in love and all of that, now you've definitely jumped ahead. And it's hard, it's a fact of reality that when we become romantically interested when we're young, we know nothing. It's like we need food, but we don't know how to produce it. It's I'm not going to say it's a sad fact, because it's just a fact. So kind of learning how to kind of be as emotionally invested as reality calls for is something that just takes practice. And that's where I think the confidence starts to show over time with age, if you grow with good habits, as opposed to getting weirder with age because you spend your life not challenging yourself.
I do think it's an interesting question of look, we live in a world where there are no kind of courtship rituals, where that's kind of been stripped away. It used to be that there's certain things that both sexes knew that they could do in order to indicate interest, but in a way that allowed everybody to remain comfortable and save face, right? And even women, I forget who was talking about this, but they're making the point that, you go to Victoria era England, if you're a woman interested in a man, you drop your handkerchief.
I was just going to say that.
He knows his job is to go pick it up and hand it over. And
I don't even have a handkerchief.
Right. And so we don't have anything like that. And so it does become a lot harder to navigate. And I'm not saying we should go back to kind of these carved out roles that everybody has to act out. But I just think in general in human life, not having any sort of infrastructure of how to interact with people, it creates a lot of problems that at least traditionally were handled in a kind of more knowable way.
Don, have you ever read? Sorry, I'm sort of expanding this a little bit. Have you ever read Iron John?
No, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, Robert Bly, I think, is a poet who wrote it, and it's sort of a male initiation book, a book about male initiation, and it sort of says the same thing about the missing aspect and modernity of male initiations. They know when they're becoming men, they know when they're moving out into the world, and there's these carved out things that they have to do, these rituals that they perform. And Robert Bly's suggestion was to start like little male groups, drumming groups and stuff where you performed male rituals. But I think there's something, I think there's something to that. It certainly makes it easier for the sexes to sort each other out when there's those kinds of clear-cut ideas in the culture.
Yeah, but think about the idea behind that. So I drop my handkerchief and you pick it up. We've had a little connection, right? And you can recreate that now all the time, right? So man holds the door for you, right? I'm a grown-ass woman. Like, obviously, if you think about it logically, I don't need someone to hold the door for me. But he does that for you, and then you give him the smile back, and you've had a little connection and a little exchange. It's very similar, I would think, to dropping my handkerchief. And you can do those types of things all the time. So I don't know, seems like it would still exist.
Well, that leads to the question of, all right, so we've initiated an interaction, or we want to, we're focusing in the first interaction. What are the best and worst pickup lines?
Well, pickup lines don't exist. No one serious is thinking about pickup lines anymore, because there's no because. Come on, no. You can say nothing and you can have an aura. Think about it. I'll tell you one story. A woman had told me that to me. So she was on a marriage, Greek traditional marriage tables. So at some point, she was chatting with someone. There was nothing. They were saying typical stuff that you say with someone when you are in a marriage. At the table, you don't know them well. You say typical stuff. And she said, when he was leaving, he touched my back in terms of nothing. Okay, nice saying you goodbye. Her line was, I still have that touch on my back. Of course, they ended up becoming a couple. So it's not what you say or what line, although that would be a fun discussion, stupid pickup lines. But it's about the quote, not in a mystic way. It's about the energy. It's about the vibe that you have. It's about how you interact. I don't know how can I put in a non-mystical way? The physicist or someone can help me here. So there is such thing as energy, right? As vibe. There is such a thing.
It's groping towards something. I don't know exactly what to call it, but I think of it as, there's communication and there's subtext, right? Like, and if you write a really good scene, like in a movie, right? If you wanted to have a romantic scene that you were acting out in a movie, Mark, like, would you want it being the guy going, hey, you're beautiful, I love you, and the girl going, you're awesome, I love you too? Or would it be something like, much more subtle, where they'd be talking about something completely unrelated to them in the relationship, but it would just be hints of this kind of like fiery passion? And I think that's kind of what happens in these moments, is that you're talking about things that mean something else and something deeper. And that's when an interaction is going really well.
And Ayn Rand is the master of that, right? In her scenes, there's always this, the girl is quote, to use the game line, the girl is constantly sit testing the guy, and the guy stands up. This is a theme in every single one of the novels. It's there in With the Living. It's in Fountainhead. I was discussing with someone, the whole Fountainhead is Dominic sit testing Rourke until literally the end of the and what I mean is she's wondering, is this guy I think he is? Is he that type of a person that I think he is? And Rourke stands up to the occasion. So, but we didn't answer your original line question, Don, which was pickup lines.
Well, I was just wanted to see if we could pull some humor out of it. Because to be serious, I agree with you 100%, Nikos. That when in the occasions when I've been asked the equivalent question by somebody, it's like, will you just walk up and say, hi, I'm Don? Don't say that, because that's my name, but like whatever your name happens to be. And it's like, that's all it takes to start a conversation with somebody. Now, there's things to learn about good conversation. And I think it's that is a useful skill to have. And unfortunately, I think it's, my kids are getting raised at an age where they're locked inside a house And then even once they're not locked inside a house, they'll be on technology all day. And I do worry about building up that skill set of being able to like say, hi, I'm Bill, like, you know, and just starting a normal conversation. But I mean, that's really, if, you know, we're not joking, like, I think that's basically the starting point of any interaction.
Can I throw one last thing on the table? So you mentioned you've met Mystery. Can we all agree, or at least those who've seen Mystery, that it takes a lot of talent to be good at that type of stuff? Unfortunately, Mystery himself was good only in that. But imagine someone like Mystery in terms of being a political activist or something. This guy would be a force of nature. Or think about, we've discussed in a previous episode, it's not a coincidence that really good teachers of game become very good either self-development teachers or entrepreneurs, because it gets talent to communicate and attract attention and convey a message the way they do it. You mentioned David D'Angelo the other time, Donna, someone who made this Eban Pagan. I don't remember which is his real name and which was his game name.
Eben is his real name.
His real name, yeah. So there is something to be taught, to be learned in the importance of communication. And that was my biggest quote lesson from a quote game, that communication is something which is, you have to take it seriously and it matters. How you present yourself matters. Woody Allen in Annie Hall is not, it's super fun film. This is not the way to go through life. You have to take yourself seriously. You have to take how you present yourself seriously, not only for romantic matters, but in general.
Well, but that's, so I agree with that part. But this is the kind of line I was trying to draw in the sand at the very beginning, which is Jordan Peterson has this, I think, really profound point about using language as a means to manipulation, which is, I want a certain outcome. I'm trying to bring purposely into existence by saying whatever is necessary in order to drive me to that outcome, versus, telling the truth and sort of like let whatever may come. And I think that the what you want to learn is, like, in effect, how to tell the truth and be somebody who is able to do that in a way that is kind of fun to be around, the ways that is clear to hear, a way that reflects a confidence that hopefully you've acquired. So it's not just tell the truth and everything good will happen to you. But I think what people like Mystery specialize in is figuring out how to, that's why I put it as manipulation. It's figuring out how to get a certain goal out of a person. And I don't think it's a legitimate goal. And I don't think it's healthy to think about, how do I make somebody want me? Like, that's weird.
Do you think,
unless you mean it in a fundamental sense of how do I become the kind of person who's wantable? That's different. But if it's like, hey Amanda, like, how am I gonna get Amanda to, like,
wait,
want to move in with me? Like, that's that's not good. But that's what politicians do. Like, it's not only pickup, right? Like, Bill Clinton was a master of game. He was a master of making you think that he cared about you, even when he didn't give a damn about you. And so that's how I see it.
There was I remember Dr. Laura. She was on the radio, and she once read a letter that one of her callers sent in. So a married man of, I don't know, 30 years, who's a musician, and he sent in this letter saying, like, I've realized that dealing with my wife is like seeing her as a musical instrument, learning what it is that I can do to make her sort of play the music that I want, and I'm sure that includes, knocking boots, to use such vulgar terms. So is there something wrong with that? Like, you're in a marriage and you're looking, what is it to do or not do to get this person to respond to me a certain way? And if that is, okay within a marriage, why is that not okay to sort of be trying different things with somebody that you meet, as long as you're honest and not trying to, manipulate them in a dishonest way?
That's actually a really good question, but I do think that there is a difference, right? Because like, if I'm trying to, seduce my wife, or somebody's trying to seduce their husband or something, what you're invested in their enjoyment, right? Whereas if you have that attitude towards a stranger, you don't know them. And so it's much more about the orientation, I think, defaults to, like, how do I use this person for my own ends in the illegitimate sense? It's not about how do I bring them joy and pleasure. You don't know them. You don't know if they want joy and pleasure from you or anything like that. Put it this way, in a marriage, you and your wife are both invested in having a great sex life. And if you're putting time into doing that, like that's kind of a positive use of your mind, is to figure out like how to make that happen. When you're trying to figure out that for a stranger, that strikes me as in a different category.
Yeah, but remember, like, if you're not being dishonest, you're not trying to have sex with somebody when it's inappropriate, like you're very much playing by the rules, but you are kind of looking at kind of what actions get a response out of them. If you were asking me for advice, and it's not just about sex, it's about like you want to attract a girl, I would say you should think in your mind, like, yes, it's yours for the taking, but you need to take it. Again, not in any way that that the law would frown upon. Like almost like a sense of entitlement. Like, don't doubt yourself. Don't wonder, would she like this? Would she not like this? Just kind of like get out there and just kind of just try some stuff.
But notice, and I don't think this is your fault, but notice that whole way of looking at things is about like, how do I attract them? Whereas like if I'm Howard Rourke walking into a room, it's not how do I attract them? It's I meet somebody and it's, am I interested in them? Like that's the primary focus. Is there's this whole sea of human beings out there. And if I see somebody who's physically attractive and carries themselves in a way that projects kind of confidence or intelligence, then I want to get to know them. And I want to find out like, are there actually values at stake there? And yeah, part of it is like, I want to come off well, but I think a lot of the growth that went on in my 20s was shifting from worrying about what they felt with me to focusing on like, who are they? And not kind of imbuing people with this higher status or this automatic value just because they were attractive or, were behind the VIP line or something.
I think that's an excellent point. And I would say that to actors who are interviewing agents. I'd say, remember, you're interviewing them. It's not the other way. It is sort of both ways, but you are, they work for you and you have to see if they bring the qualities to bear on your career that you want. And that reverses the whole power dynamic in the room and automatically would give lots of actors confidence in the room with agents, whereas if they go there like, will you take me? Will you take me? Will you take me? It has a completely different vibe to it and gives everybody in the room a completely different feeling.
Yeah. Although I have to point out, this is actually a piece of advice that some, pickup artists offer is be the prize.
Well, that's probably more than just one pickup artist. That's a lot of good advice you can get. And it's not just from, like I said, these authors or program directors, but just friends you have or people, like they'll say, be the selector in your mind. And that kind of becomes one of the ways that you become attractive. So yeah, like I agree, like ultimately the final sort of stage of the game is you're not actually trying to attract her. You're actually interested in kind of, is this somebody that would be right for me? And it might become like reciprocal in that way. But I just kind of like overall, I think I see a lot more positive in this, in the game, so to speak. I feel like Nikos is on the same page as myself. But maybe Don, you're a bit more critical. Like you think maybe there's more like ill motives behind some of these tactics.
I think there's a category of advice to be gotten, but the people who are offering it are predominantly not people who've built up a happy romantic relationship. They're people who pursue one night stands. And look, one of my best friends when I was in my early 20s was this guy. Like we would go out, to bars or clubs or something. And all night long, women would be coming over with him. And finally, one day I asked, like, what is it you do? He goes, well, I just come and order a drink and sit down and wait for them to come here. And that's not very helpful, right? So there is room for guidance that can be hard to get, but it's who are you getting it
So
from?
Is he very good looking? Like, why do you think it is?
He's decent looking, but I mean, looking back, it's just he carried himself. He really didn't care. Mm-hmm. So there was no like neediness. It was just full confidence. Like he carried him, like this guy had been, in the military and everything. And like had seen some shit. And so, he just carried himself like a guy who knew what he was about and wasn't trying to get anything from anybody, and, was decently attractive. And I think that it was that fact that exactly what we've been talking about, like it all came from being an actual person who you'd want to know and who was actually confident. And that was kind of radiating in everything that he did. It wasn't like if I had just sat there and like kind of copied him and how he looked, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
So what I think you have to earn those qualities. And I think the game is trying to, short circuit that process in a way, or trying to give people shortcuts. And the advice can be very good. Like Nikos, I've come to think that Nikos is sort of right. If it's a self-improvement thing, then you're actually on the road to earning the stuff that now other people vibe off the fact that you've earned it. And that's very powerful.
I think the main purpose, the main reason that the game industry, the pickup industry arose is because there's a lot of people who they have a lot to offer, but they're too shy, and they need to get to that place where they're confident, where they, where they are the selector, where they are the prize. So how do we get them from being inside their own head? And maybe this is analogous to teaching somebody acting. How do we get from somebody who's constantly questioning themselves, second guessing and doubting themselves? How do we get them from there to getting them as comfortable meeting a new woman as a seasoned actor is stepping in front of the camera? And the answer is, I think, practice. And that's where the pickup artists are saying, yep, get out there and practice and see what got you a positive response, and see what got you, maybe a negative response, and try to abstract some general principles. And it doesn't need to be for a one-night stand. It can be towards, a happy relationship. That's how
it's enjoyable sharing this nice vibe. It's almost a benevolent universe stuff that, I don't really know these people, but for the 2 hours that we're together in this party, I want to share. I want to have a good time, and I assume that you are for the same reason here. So we have a good vibe, irrespective they're men or women.
Mm-hmm. Some of one of these super chats might prompt a long conversation. So maybe I ought to read some of these now. All right, Jonathan Honig, thank you. Thank you, Marilyn. She says, don't be creepy. Have an IQ that exceeds your age. I can do one of those. I won't say which. Robert with $2 says, Don speaks wisely, as usual. Jonathan with $4.99 says, I'm young and single, and I loves to mingle, in quotation marks. Now there's a pickup line. Now, Allison with $2 says, be yourself, not cringy. Once again, I can do one of those two things. Roland with $1.99 says, I guess game is for players. Sure is. Shruti. Now, this is the one I was saying. Shruti with 200 of the Indian currencies. It looks like a lot of money, but who knows what it's actually becomes once we convert it. But thank you. She says, do you have any movies or novels in mind that depict healthy and passionate romantic pursuits? So here's where I thought we might have a lot to talk about.
Oh, boy.
Oh, my God. I have a brain freeze.
I don't know that this isn't, I don't know that it's helpful in terms of advice, but I think one of the kind of like the sexiest movies is the Thomas Crown Affair, the newer one with Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
What's her name? Because it's now it's in the context of like he's a billionaire bank or art robber, but what really is this playful game between playful game. But it's this playfulness between him and this cop who's hunting him. And it really captures, I think, in a kind of larger than life way, the dynamic of just bumping into somebody and having a great conversation that eventually could go somewhere. And I really adore it as a kind of symbol for the best. It has a lot of Fountainhead qualities to it in terms of the development of the relationship.
I guess the one movie that comes to mind, and there's a lot wrong with the sort of relationships skills depicted in this movie, but I've always liked Scott Pilgrim versus the World because towards the end he kind of realizes it's not about kind of winning her, but really achieving self-respect. And that's something I've really liked about that movie. And then, of course, because he unlocked that achievement, the girl finds him more attractive than before.
Here's a book that came to mind related to game. So Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This guy's super popular in Greece. I don't know in the US. So the story, and it's not a spoiler because you get this already in the first page. This guy is eternally in love with the same woman, eternally. He has her when they are teens, then he loses her, and then he reappears after like 40 years. The very interesting thing is, while for years I consider it the most romantic thing ever written. There's also some malevolent universe premise there. But anyway, the very interesting thing is, while he's forever interested in her, he has affairs with so many other women. But and he never lies to them. He always says, sorry, my heart is always belonging to that woman. But this aloofness makes him irresistible. So there is something interesting in that. So it's interesting with what we said about aloofness. Related to films, a nice film that I watched relatively recently is a black and white film called For Lovers Only. I like this as a romantic film. It's one of these European films. Another interesting film was that I found romantic was The Thin Red Line. It's an Argentinian film. I don't remember the exact Argentinian title, but it's the type of things that I like in films. And it's a bit with unrequited love and all that stuff. So these are some recommendations. In terms of quote game in films, the most famous one is Crazy Stupid Love. It's Ryan Gosling. So the mere fact that he's there and he breathes makes him irresistible. But it's also interesting how he interacts with girls. Obviously, every James Bond. Yeah.
Hitch. Come on, man. Hitch with Will Smith. He's a dating coach.
Yeah, but the advice he gives is Hitch is Hollywood propaganda on how to fail eternally with women. I don't consider Hitch a gay movie.
No, I think the best of all time is Heat, where Robert De Niro says to the girl next to him at the counter, "Why are you so interested in what I'm reading?" and shuts her down and then has her heart forever. No, Michael Mann has very weird launching of relationships in his films.
Amanda and Mark?
Yeah, nothing.
I got nothing.
Well, maybe that's Hollywood's fault and authors' fault that we don't have more good examples of the pursuit, or maybe the actual realistic pursuit of a successful relationship doesn't make for a great plot. Maybe reality, when you do achieve a lot, it's much less sexy than we've been led to expect.
Having said that, Ellen Kenner's book is not about quote game, but it's it has good advice in terms of it's healthy and it goes beyond this. You just need to have communications. It talks about this playfulness, if I remember well. So it's an interesting book within the objectivist literature or the wider objectivist literature. Objectivist themed literature or objectivist influenced literature on relationship.
The Selfish Path,
if I remember.
The Selfish Path to Romance.
What did I say?
I don't remember what you said.
That one.
Okay, so one of the things that I remember, I've read most of that book, is it says make yourself more attractive. That's something a lot of people probably like to skip over and think like, where, they just feel like, where's my lover? Where's my partner?
Yeah, no, and I mean, one very interesting thing is how often. So, I mean, we've been stressing, or at least I've been stressing, the unhealthy part of kind of relationship advice, but I think there's an equally unhealthy kind of resistance that people have to changing in order to get a relationship they want. And I've met plenty of people who like, dude, if you just bought new clothes, shaved and showered, like but they won't do it. Like, it's like, and they'll have all kinds of rationalizations about like, no, this is how I am. Take me the way I am, like that kind of garbage. And I think it's really a defense mechanism in the sense that it's, they're afraid to actually not have that excuse for why they're being rejected, because they think, well, if I'm looking good and they still reject me, what does that say about me?
Well, what do you think about, the idea that people think there's such a thing as unconditional love, and so that maybe that ideal is mixed in with this cat's, this dude not improving himself because he's under the illusion that, hey, real love is unconditional and they should love me just as I am, as if there's no place for self-improvement.
I would ask him, are you attracted to women that are physically attractive and work on themselves, or do you just see the inner beauty hidden behind an ungroomed and uncaring facade?
Yeah, I mean, my wife has let me know I have standards to uphold. This is not a free ride.
Well, speaking of that, then Shallow Hal. There you go.
Ooh, yeah. Well,
about love.
I feel like that movie, and this was kind of like it would have ruined the theme, but maybe the morbidly obese, whatever, I forget the actress, but maybe she's not. It's not healthy.
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Well, Gwyneth Paltrow being like 400 pounds is gonna die in 10 years if she doesn't. Like maybe they can meet halfway. like he can be a little bit less materialistic, and she could actually not have an eating disorder. But I mean. I like the line from that movie when Gwyneth's father and Gwyneth and her mother walk into the restaurant. Her Irish father says, like, he tells the host, "Tonight I feel like a bed of roses," or like a thorn in a bed of roses. Like he's the thorn, and because he's surrounded by beautiful women. I know, wonderful story. Some more super chats. Cobb with 199. Elon Musk has poor communication skills. Oh, that's too bad.
I think he's got like a whole comm center. He can communicate with the friggin' moon, can he? What are you talking about?
He's getting better though.
Mm-hmm. Cobb again with 199 says pickup artists come off as second-handed and status seeking.
Maybe sometimes, yeah.
Pickup artists, yeah, for sure, but not people seeking self-improvement.
Yeah.
But having said that, there is something to the fact that you need some practice. I mean, if we remember how pathetic, at least speaking about myself, we were in our first relationship and how clumsy, thank God that this woman turned up not to be the woman of our lives, because then we would have ruined it forever.
Bullet dodged, it sounds like. Yeah. So in the non-super chat, Enric said, it sounds like the game is about triggering subconscious values, which is an interesting, I think, conceptualization. But remember, first comes perception, then you conceptualize. So don't go meet people and think of ways to trigger their subconscious values. How about just have a conversation and be yourself? And then later you can look back and say, oh, what I did actually triggered the subconscious value. And that's what life is all about.
Well, and there's also a difference between values and motivation by love versus motivation by fear. So when you have kind of techniques like show a lot of interest at first and then pull away, which will make them want to chase, which is a common piece of advice, that's not tapping into values. That's tapping into motivation by fear. That's tapping into people's like neediness and insecurity. So that's the kind of thing where, does it work? Well, yeah, if work means have somebody like show some sort of interest in you, it works, but it works in a really corrupt way that you don't want those people in your life.
Again, I need to be a little disagreeable and say, yes, a lot of people use these tools for the devil and to induce insecurity. But there is something positive behind that philosophy, which is like, if you're not constantly available and you're seen as somebody who's not who's got a lot going on for them, it makes for a healthier process of getting to know each other and makes you kind of look like you have a life, I guess. I don't know if we disagree. Maybe we're just focused on different aspects of the culture around this game.
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question, but my kind of view is that like, if Rourke had said like met Dominique, that's a little bit of a bad scenario, but like, let's say like some, people who had the potential to connect that way. And like you met a girl and you're like, yeah, I'm on vacation for 2 weeks. Like, do you want to hang out a bunch? Like, I don't think that like that would be, I don't think she'd be like, oh, I'm not, this guy is just so available. It depends on where it's coming from. If it's coming from like like I know who I am, what I'm about, and I have some time and I want to spend a lot of it with you. I don't think like, oh, well, you're not going to, that's not going to grow into anything because you haven't like signaled that you're unavailable or something like that.
Yeah. Show me where that works. Show me where that works. Telling someone I want to spend a bunch of time in the next 2 weeks with you. I think the proven communication is, I'm going to be in town. Maybe we can meet up. And then if it turns into a bunch of time spent together, then it was successful. So yeah, maybe with a certain personality, if you got a certain kind of humorous communication style, then you could say, yeah, I want to spend the next 2 weeks with you. And it doesn't come off as needy, but in many cases that would be, I think, a counterproductive way to speak. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's just kind of how I tend to.
I mean, I would really like it if a man told me what he wanted. It's honesty, and that's really sexy. I don't see what the problem with that is. I mean, why are you hiding it? Is it because you think she's going to be like, oh, I don't want to do that? I don't know. Maybe she'll be like, hell yeah, come on over. 2 weeks, great. I don't know.
It's again, a lot of these things are case by case, but sure. I think you don't want to come off needy, and I do think there is wisdom in saying, like, step by step and have some patience and all that. But I keep repeating, it's case by case. And a lot of the cases depend on the personalities of the people involved. Some people, they meet, they have sex the day they meet, and they stay married for the rest of their life. But that doesn't mean that having sex with someone the day you meet is generally a winning strategy for a long-term relationship. So, you just gotta kind of look at these things case by case.
So let's let everybody know what's coming up for the rest of the day.
All right. 8 p.m. UK time. It's communication boot camp for members only. And that's with you. Wait.
Well, that's my bad, because no, it's not today.
Oh,
well, I have an appointment I can't get out of.
See, guys, this is why not being entirely available makes you more attractive. So scratch that from the record. Then at 10 p.m. UK time, it's Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nacer, misspelled in the notes. Boy, we're having a bad day with these notes. Okay, and then they're coming up at 9:30 UK time, a special Ayn Rand Con Europe announcement. So it was previously announced Ayn Rand Con is coming to London April 1st. This is not a joke. This is not a prank. April 1st. But another announcement coming at 9:30 today, UK time, whatever that means to you.
I'll be there.
On the announcement as well as the conference. So Nikos is all over this thing, ladies. All right, everybody.
Too available, not good.
Too available. Nikos, I told you got to be a little bit harder to get. No. All right. Good talk, guys. I guess we'll wrap it there.
Our longest episode. Thanks, everyone, and talk soon.
Thank you, guys.
And goodbye.